Hello, everyone. My name is Jesse Brisendine, and welcome back to another edition of A Handful of Hope. I am so happy and grateful to have Natalie with us today, who is a strategic consultant and conscious coach, the creator of the worldwide movement Love is the True Black, which saw her partner with the United Nations on International Day of Peace and create a viral social media campaign engaging over 1.6 million people globally. Natalie has worked as an entrepreneur for the last 17 years and has a lifelong passion for business, human potential, and behavioral psychology. She helps creative business people like you align your resources to create growth and works with passionate entrepreneurs and executives to define purpose and create next step pragmatic approach to achievement of your objectives. Natalie works with forward-thinking businesses through custom designed leadership development programs to facilitate building authentic leadership, creating sustainable change throughout your organization. She specializes in the ideation of additional revenue streams. Born insatiably curious, Natalie's gift in business is seeing patterns where others see complexity. She believes we are all connected and that deep down we desire to be part of something larger than ourselves. There's nothing that gets her as excited as working on projects, big or small, that have the capacity to impact humanity in a positive way. Ultimately, our success is not measured on what we say or what we think, but on our actions. Natalie loves co-creating action plans to move towards a future that aligns with the truth of who you are as an individual or business. Her transformational work was born out of her own hands-on experience of how to succeed in life and business. This work centers around strategic business and personal development, coaching, training, and I have been honored to be invited to speak to audiences about these passions all around the globe. Natalie's working life began in the UK music industry, then moved into design and project management. She lives all over the world, 6 countries, 3 continents and counting. She speaks 3 languages, loves the color red, and cackle loudly at irreverent jokes. Oh, I love that. But she's not doing all this. You'll find her hanging out with her 3 beautiful, no longer little children, dancing in their kitchen, leading women's masterminds, meditating, kickboxing, or studying spirituality just for kicks. Natalie, welcome, and thank you so much for being here.
Wow, that was I didn't realize you were going to read that whole thing. Thank you, Jesse. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm super excited for you to be here. And I think that you obviously come with such a unique and diverse background with such a breadth of life experience and professional experience too. And then some of what we were talking about before we even started recording, I think it just makes you such a perfect and powerful person to speak to what we're going to talk about today, which is really honing in on spiritual practices, right, during these times. And I'll let you kind of introduce what that is for everyone.
Sure. Yes. So I was just sharing with Jesse, and I would love to share with anyone who's listening, that the last 4 years of my life have been particularly challenging. I have experienced a large amount of change and trauma, the highlights of which have been, I like to say, being stranded on an island, because it sounds like very dramatic. The island was the UK, because I was previously living in the US, and simultaneously not being able to see my 2 youngest children for 18 months because of visa challenges, and losing the larger part of my business and income stream, whilst getting divorced, having been married for 18 years, and my oldest child struggling with severe mental health challenges. So I tell you all of this because what I learned through that tremendous time of challenge, which I think would easily be similar to some of the feelings that people have going on right now, as we find ourselves in this moment in history in uncharted water. None of us really know how this is going to unfold or how it's going to impact us, whether that be in a health or an economic sense. And what I found during my own time of intense stress and trauma was that it really was what I would describe as spiritual practice that kept me sane, that kept me calm, and that actually allowed me to move through those challenging moments with as much grace as I believe was available, and come back to a place in my life where I feel stronger and calmer and more internally peaceful than ever before.
I love that. I think that when I'm listening to you talk, I can feel a sense of peace almost emanating from you. And I think that's such a beautiful quality. For people who may not be familiar with spirituality, what is spirituality and how is it, or is it different than religion in that sense? Or I guess, what would spirituality be for you? And is there even a universal definition that we could use to define it?
Yeah, so my opinions and or beliefs around spirituality is that I think it's a deeply personal journey.
Mm.
I would believe in what I would define as universal spiritual truth, which I think has been delivered to us over the course of human history throughout many, many different teachers and modalities, some of those being religion. I don't personally identify with a specific religion, but I do consider myself to be a deeply spiritual person. And actually, I had this conversation this week with a friend of mine. I was sharing a prayer practice that I think really works well for me and has worked really well for people that I work with, clients. And he asked me, he said, because he was raised a Christian, and he said, so when you're praying, what do you pray to? And I said, it's funny because I hadn't really considered it, but for me, it's love. Like I would pray to love. I would pray to truth. I would pray to divine guidance, because to me, love feels like the highest vibration. You know, for some people, actually, I just wrote, we're going to talk about this a bit later. I think I am offering to do prayer and meditation right now at this time with people who want to join for free. And I just wrote something around it, and I said it's like a BYO spiritual effigy. You know, anything that you believe in, whether it's angels, higher self, whether it's people who like to refer to it as the universe. I said, even if you want to bring David Bowie as an ascended master, that's all good. It's like I don't feel that there has to be rules around it. It's whatever works for you.
Love that. Talk to us about the power of prayer. I know we were talking a little bit before that, and you just mentioned it, and I think that. So I've started praying. I think when I was a little kid, I was maybe, we were trying to figure out the age groups and what age range that is. I think I was in 3rd grade, and I remember my dog died suddenly. And I don't know why, but I felt compelled to try to talk to the, God, whatever I could understand as a 3rd grade, so 7, 8 years old, however old that was. And I remember having this moment where I was on my knees, because I thought that's what you're supposed to do. And where the house I grew up in, there was these 2 big windows that looked out at this forest down below. And just asking for some sort of sign that my dog was okay. And there was not a gust of wind that day. There was no trees blowing. There was no wind, anything like that. But on my life, as sure as I'm seeing you right now, there was a tree that was directly off to my left, and the top of it started to move like this. No other trees around moved. No other bushes were moving, but this tree was fully moving. And I mean, I still get so emotional when I think about it, because I realize how powerful that experience was for me. And it's, something I've kept as a practice since. So can you speak a little bit to the power of prayer and how that shows up for you?
Yes, I was sharing with you before. About 8 months ago, I started studying to be a minister in a course in miracles, and really my motivation behind doing that was that I wanted to deepen my own spiritual practice, and I knew that if I was studying, that would be kind of a natural side effect of what would happen. So prayer is a relatively new practice in my life. I just want to be completely open and transparent about that. I did not grow up in a religious family, and I had some some negative experiences actually with religion growing up, and I had a kind of a resistance to prayer because for me it was very, very closely associated with what I judged to be dogmatic religious beliefs. So prayer has been a relatively new, I'm going to call it a tool that's been integrated into my life. And for me, the biggest shift around prayer, actually, I had two big shifts around prayer. So the first one was that towards the end of last year, my daughter, who has struggled with her mental health in quite an intense way for the last 2.5 years, got hospitalized. And it was a very, as I'm sure anyone, I was going to say anyone who has kids, but anyone who has someone in their life that they love and care about can imagine that and mental health is something that we struggle to talk about, right? Because it's different if you have someone you love and care about, they break a bone, there's this sense that there's a protocol that we follow in order for the bone to heal, or, you know, a protocol that we follow in order for an illness, a physical illness, to get better. But with mental health, there doesn't seem to be such a straight route from challenge to okay. So it was a really, really a time of crisis in my life. Which I think is, you know, appropriate to talk about now, because I think many people out there now are struggling in the same way. You know, I was suffering with waking up in the morning and I was having very, very anxious thoughts. And I think how I would describe them would be repetitive, violent thoughts. And I think many of us can relate to that, maybe not with this specific situation, but they would sound like, oh my goodness, I can't believe that she's there. This is my fault. What did I do to make this happen? I'm a bad person. I'm a bad parent. Is she okay? Who is she with? What's happening? Is she safe? Like all of these thoughts. And I would begin to physiologically feel this anxiety rise in my body to the point where, you know, my hands would be shaking, or I could feel it in my heart, in my stomach. And it's paralyzing. You know, that kind of repetitive, violent thought can be paralyzing, you know. And actually, from a neurological perspective, if we want to momentarily take it out of the spiritual, what happens when our fight or flight response is triggered is actually the prefrontal cortex, which is the rational part of our brain, shuts down, and we go into the amygdala, which is the emotional part of the brain, and we are unable to access rational thinking when we're in fight or flight, which is kind of the opposite response that we want to be able to access during a time of crisis. Because what we want to be able to do is feel calm and think about, okay, what is the next best step I can take in this situation? So from a neuroscience perspective, we're not able to access that when we're feeling that much physiological anxiety in our body. So prayer. So I was given this prayer by my mentor in A Course in Miracles at this time, because I shared with her on one of my calls, I'm trying to work out what the next best step is. And maybe many people can relate to that now. Like maybe, you know, your job is in jeopardy, or maybe you have vulnerable people in your life who, or maybe you're a vulnerable person health-wise, right? Or maybe you have a business that you run which is being compromised, or maybe you're self-employed. Like there's so much challenge going on. And my mentor offered me this prayer, and she said, it goes like this: I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. It's like, I'm already sold. This is my kind of prayer. So this first part, admitting, I don't know what the fuck I'm doing, these feelings of, and then being asked to identify the feelings, these feelings of anxiety, these feelings of panic, these feelings of worry, these feelings that the world is going to end, these feelings that people that I love are not going to be okay, these feelings that I'm not going to be okay, are really hurting me. Please take them and help me. I'm willing to see this differently. And I would find myself repeating that prayer over and over again in my head during this time of crisis in my life. Sometimes 5 times, sometimes 10 times. And something really amazing began to happen, which was that I would start to feel at some point an ease in my physiology. That's where I'd feel it first. Like my hands would stop trembling. I would start to feel the tightness in my chest begin to release.
Mm.
And little by little, by staying in this practice, as and when those negative, violent thoughts arose throughout the day, what I found was I was literally creating what I would describe as internal spaciousness. And what that meant was I was able to function through a period of crisis, make sure that my other kids got to school, make sure that everyone had food to eat, make sure that I was considering and taking the best possible steps given the circumstances that I could to support and love my daughter in her healing.
Mm. Make
sure that I was sleeping, because I mean, nobody wants to know me if I'm not sleeping. And so yeah, so that's one of the ways that prayer has been transformative in my life, in acting as a tool to stop those persistent, violent, negative thoughts.
If somebody's watching this right now and they resonate with that, but but they're not sure how to do the practice of it, is it something where you need to be on your knees, hands clasped? Is it something that you say out loud? Is it something that you say silently to yourself? Do they have like a specific time and date to do it? What is like the mechanics of a practice look like where somebody can really put that integrate it as easily as possible into their life and habitually start to work it in?
Yeah, so those are great questions, and thank you for asking. My answer to that is I am not a believer in things having to look a specific way. I'm a believer in doing something in a way that works for you. I don't pray on my knees. I mean, I actually tend to pray. I pray every morning before I meditate, and I tend to pray in my meditation position, which is cross-legged. And I do put my hands together. Actually, they move from my prayer position, which would be this, to my meditation position, which would be my palms open on the tops of my knees. But when I'm in prayer throughout the day, it can look like me sitting at my office chair in front of my desktop computer and just closing my eyes for 30 seconds or a minute. And for me, those prayers are spoken internally, but it doesn't mean that they wouldn't work if you wanted to speak them out loud. And when I work with clients around creating their own spiritual practice, for me, one of the biggest things that I ask people to do is to trust themselves. Because I believe that we all know what we need on a deep level. So if you are doing a prayer practice on your knees with your hands together and it feels amazing, like you can tell by the way it feels, that's probably the perfect position for you to pray in. If it feels just as good for you to be doing it sitting in a chair in your backyard with your eyes closed or opened, like you will feel if it feels good. And there's a cultivation of trust there of yourself, of knowing what you need. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes total sense. That's super helpful. We were talking offline about one of the byproducts of social isolating, social distancing right now is not enough people are getting hugs. And we might have people that we share space with, and even if we're sharing space with them, we not be proactively as hugging. And there's science behind, right, how many hugs that we actually should be getting for elevating our health. And you wanted to share with us really quickly an exercise that is like giving yourself a big beautiful hug.
Yes, I really did. So I like to do credit where credit's due. So last year I had the beautiful opportunity to go to Copenhagen to study a mastery of self-love with Janet Attwood, who wrote the Passion Test. And this was one of the many tools that she taught during this process. And I love it. I use it all the time. I teach it to people all the time. It's actually one of those things that I teach in my kind of women's work, in my spiritual work. And I even recently taught it when I was training a pharmaceutical company in Boston, a completely corporate engagement. And it came back on all the feedback forms as one of the things people loved the most.
Incredible.
What Janet taught us is, and I'm not a yogi, so I just want to put that out there ahead of time, is that our hands are a bit like our feet in that they're full of reflexology points. So in yoga, they have lots of different hand positions, which they call mudras, and they are designed to activate different reflexology points in the hand. And the mudra that she taught us was called the Thunderbolt mudra. And you interlace your fingers like this with your thumbs pointing upwards, and you just place your hands on your heart. And the concept behind this particular hand position is that it is a generator of oxytocin, which is the comforting, feel-good, love hormone that we experience, like when we stroke a puppy or hug a baby or hug someone that we care about. So this process, and if you're somewhere where you can do this right now, I invite you to just join us, is interlacing the fingers, thumbs pointing upwards, hands on heart, and just beginning to pay attention to your breath. You're not needing to make your breath any specific way, just noticing wherever it's at right now. Just noticing maybe if there's anywhere that it's getting stuck. And then just imagining as you breathe in, that you're actually breathing in through your heart. Breathing in for a count of 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And exhaling through your heart. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And keeping that rhythm and breathing love for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And breathing out love for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And again, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And whenever you're ready, open your eyes. How did it feel, Jesse?
Feels like I just want to hang out with myself and keep hugging for a little bit.
You can stay there as long as you like.
Yeah.
And also, if you're someone who's experiencing anxiety at the moment, as I think lots of people are, well, I'm curious to know from you, Jesse. Did you feel any kind of level of calmness dropping in?
Yeah, I did. I felt like I felt even a greater sense of peace. I think I felt I think I mentioned earlier on, just talking to you, I feel this kind of peacefulness. I think your energy, your affect is a very like calming peaceful, which it's very, I love being in that energy. And as we were going through that, I just felt that it wasn't just a peace that was coming maybe from being with you, but also almost a peace within. Like it was making my moment, what I felt was already a great moment, even greater, because I felt more of a sense of there was nothing else I needed in this moment to make it feel full.
Mm. Beautiful. Yeah, so if you're a person who currently is struggling with anxiety about, well, let's be honest, there are lots of things to currently feel anxious about. You can do that at any time, any place, whether you're sitting, in your chair, in the living room, when you wake up in the morning, if you feel anxious. Even sometimes if I struggle to access like a good meditative space, I will meditate like this instead of meditating with palms up, because I can just feel maybe that I need the comfort. So I hope everyone got to feel like they gave themselves a hug, and that they're going to regularly give themselves a hug.
Yeah, if those of you who are watching this, you'll have to comment below and let us know. And for everyone watching, rewatch this. I think that everything Natalie said was so beautiful, the way she constructed together, but practical and tangible. And I think that I loved what you were saying, the differentiation, right, between when we're in so much of those spaces of anxiety and stress, which is natural to feel in this moment with all that's going on. What it actually does is it puts you in this weakened place where you're not able to make the decisions that you really need to be making right now. And getting back to, what's amazing with this whole series is everyone I talk to, we keep coming back to going within, this place of being. And the power of prayer, my goodness, for those of you who may not be particularly religious like myself or Natalie, but just to have that practice to be able to develop and to surrender and realize that you may not know what you're doing, but you can still give away some of that emotion to something greater than, something else beyond yourself. And in that, maybe just find that peace and that calmness that gets you to a place of resourcefulness and gets you to a place where you're able to do and think more clearly and figure out what's the best thing for you, for your business, for your family, for your friends, for your community. It's getting out of that me and getting more into the we, right? And I think that this is such an amazing resources that Natalie's provided for us. And we'll be sure to include the links and everything for her prayers that she's going to be doing, so you can join in on that. And Natalie, thank you so much for being here. This was incredible, as are you, and I'm so grateful for your time, your presence, and you sharing so generously with us today.
Oh, thank you, Jesse. It's an absolute honor and a privilege to be invited to share. I really, really enjoyed our chat today. So thank you.
All right, everybody. We'll see you next time on another edition of A Handful of Hope. Take care and bye-bye.